Under a slate-grey Hangzhou sky, the aircraft carrying Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin descends slowly through mist and drizzle. The runway glistens in the morning light as the plane's wheels touch Chinese soil. For Moscow and Beijing, this landing is more than a diplomatic courtesy. It is a carefully timed symbol of continuity in an increasingly divided world. As the engines wind down, the red-white-blue flag on the fuselage catches the camera's lens. It is November 3rd, 2025. Mishustin has arrived in Hangzhou, the innovation capital of eastern China, to meet his counterpart, Premier Qiang, and later President Xi Jinping. The moment, though routine, carries weight. Russia's head of government stepping once again onto Chinese ground as his country deepens its pivot toward Asia. He emerges from the plane with a measured stride, greeted first by Zhejiang's governor Liu Jie. Cameras capture their handshake, a gesture layered with intent. Liu Jie, representing one of China's most dynamic provinces, welcomes the Russian delegation with the promise of regional cooperation. Behind the smiles are concrete plans, digital economy partnerships, cross-border logistics projects, and cultural exchanges already in motion between Zhejiang and Russian regions. A few steps away waits Zhang Hanhui, China's ambassador to Russia. His presence underscores continuity. Zhang has spent years cultivating working channels between the two governments, and his handshake with Mishustin reflects a relationship no longer defined by headlines, but by habit. The brief greeting will soon be replayed on both countries' official news feeds, a visual shorthand for partnership steady, dialogue ongoing. The convoy moves off the runway. Security staff form neat lines, flags flutter, photographers retreat. The choreography of diplomacy resumes its familiar rhythm. But beneath the ceremony runs a deeper current. This visit is not a courtesy call. It is an economic lifeline, a strategic reassurance, and a message to Western capitals that Moscow and Beijing intend to navigate global turbulence together. In recent months, Western sanctions have tightened around Russia's industries, cutting access to finance, components, and markets. China, meanwhile, faces its own pressures from tariffs, technology restrictions, and slowing growth. For both, cooperation is not merely convenient, it is necessary. Mishustin's visit aims to strengthen precisely those channels that remain open: energy trade, high-tech manufacturing, and joint infrastructure development. Inside the motorcade, advisors discuss schedules. At the top of the agenda is Mishustin's meeting with Premier Qiang, a conversation expected to yield new trade targets and a framework for settlements in national currencies. The yuan and the ruble have already displaced the dollar in more than 90% of bilateral transactions. Officials now talk about expanding that mechanism into digital payment pilot zones linking Russian and Chinese banks. Hangzhou, long associated with China's technology boom, is a fitting venue. Here, tech conglomerates and startups are exploring cooperation with Russian counterparts in cybersecurity, cloud services, and artificial intelligence governance. It was at the 2025 APEC summit in Guangzhou that both governments endorsed sovereign AI frameworks. And today, those ideas resurface in pragmatic business language: joint innovation parks, data center investments, and knowledge exchange programs. For Russia, deepening ties with China provides both economic relief and political leverage. Trade between the two nations has reached record levels, over $240 billion last year, a figure Mishustin and Qiang are eager to surpass. In public remarks previewing the visit, Qiang said that China stands ready to expand cooperation in energy, innovation, and logistics to build a shared development corridor. Beijing's message is clear: partnership without limits still has practical milestones. The Power of Siberia-2 gas pipeline is one of them, a multi-billion-dollar project intended to reroute Russian energy exports toward China, securing stable demand while reinforcing Beijing's energy diversification. Alongside, agricultural exports from Russian farmlands to China's eastern provinces have surged, from grain to dairy, helping offset shortages caused by disrupted global supply chains. When Mishustin meets Qiang at the provincial guest house, the mood is formal but cordial. The two prime ministers sit across a long table draped in red and gold. Behind them, flags of both nations stand side by side. Cameras click as the meeting begins. Qiang thanks his guest for what he calls consistent commitment to pragmatic cooperation. Mishustin replies with equal restraint, emphasizing that Russia values the trust and partnership that have developed between their governments. Beyond protocol, the talks cover digital infrastructure, transportation links through Central Asia, and cooperation in high-tech manufacturing. Officials discuss linking the Eurasian Economic Union's logistics corridors with China's Belt and Road Initiative, a merger of regional strategies that could shift the center of gravity for Eurasian trade. Back in Moscow, analysts watch closely. Some describe this as a new stage of interdependence, others as Moscow's increasing reliance on Beijing. Yet both governments frame it differently, as multipolar cooperation, a partnership of equals resisting Western dominance. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. The following day, Mishustin travels to Beijing for his audience with President Xi Jinping. At the Great Hall of the People, red carpet stairs lead up to ornate doors, flanked by guards. Xi greets Mishustin with the practiced warmth of an experienced statesman. Their meeting, lasting over an hour, covers security, trade, and regional diplomacy. Xi emphasizes China's commitment to multipolar stability, a phrase now central to Beijing's foreign policy lexicon. Mishustin reaffirms Russia's alignment, highlighting that both countries defend the principles of fairness and respect in international relations. The symbolism of these statements is not lost on observers. As Western alliances strengthen through NATO and the G7, Russia and China craft their own narrative of cooperation rooted in sovereignty and non-interference. Yet even as they emphasize independence, their economies intertwine more tightly each year. Hangzhou's significance extends beyond politics. It represents innovation, a city where China's private sector meets global markets. For Russian delegates, touring industrial parks here offers lessons in digitization and green technology. Joint projects discussed include electric vehicle components, logistics software, and small reactor energy solutions, areas where Russian engineering and Chinese scale may complement each other. Throughout the visit, Mishustin's delegation includes ministers from industry, finance, and energy, a sign that this mission covers every pillar of cooperation. A statement from the Russian government's Telegram channel reads, "The Prime Minister's visit to China reflects our mutual resolve to strengthen sovereign economic partnerships and technological cooperation. The language mirrors Beijing's vocabulary: sovereignty, resilience, partnership." Outside the official halls, ordinary Chinese citizens express curiosity rather than controversy. News outlets highlight economic topics rather than politics. For local entrepreneurs, the visit could mean new supply contracts or investment opportunities in Russia's Far East. In both countries, media portray the relationship as stable and forward-looking. In regional capitals, however, the visit is studied with greater caution. Tokyo monitors developments for hints of deeper energy or defense alignment. Seoul notes potential shifts in semiconductor supply chains. New Delhi, balancing its own relations with both Moscow and Washington, assesses whether the growing Sino-Russian axis alters Asia's strategic map. Western diplomats, too, read the optics carefully. Mishustin's presence in China, shortly after renewed European sanctions, signals Moscow's capacity to sustain global partnerships. For Beijing, it demonstrates diplomatic gravity that leaders come to China not only for commerce, but for counsel. Meanwhile, cultural and educational cooperation fills the softer side of the agenda. Universities from Hangzhou and St. Petersburg are preparing to open joint innovation labs. Next year's China-Russia Cultural Year 2026 will feature art exhibitions, film festivals, and student exchanges designed to broaden public understanding beyond state rhetoric. These initiatives remind both societies that diplomacy is not only about energy and trade, but about people, ideas, and shared creativity. Back on the tarmac in Hangzhou, the cameras capture Mishustin's departure. The convoy glides toward the aircraft that will carry him to Beijing. The handshakes are repeated, the flags wave once more. To the untrained eye, it is another round of diplomatic theatre. To those following global politics, it is a glimpse of how power is shifting from west to east, from confrontation to calculated cooperation. As the jet lifts off, its engines leave a faint echo over Zhejiang's hills. The images soon appear on Russian state television and on the Chinese Foreign Ministry's feed. Commentators call the visit a success. No major agreements are announced publicly, Yet both sides know the value lies in the continuity itself. Every meeting, every handshake, every carefully chosen phrase builds the scaffolding of a long-term partnership. In Moscow, analysts summarize the outcome: the expansion of ruble-yuan settlements, progress on infrastructure corridors, renewed commitment to the Power of Siberia-2 pipeline. In Beijing, officials highlight stable energy cooperation and technological synergy. Both sides claim mutual victory, a hallmark of modern diplomacy where optics often weigh as heavily as outcomes. As daylight fades over Hangzhou, local news broadcasts replay the arrival scene. The same aircraft, the same drizzle, the same applause, yet context transforms repetition into meaning. In a world reshaped by sanctions, wars, and shifting alliances, even a brief airport ceremony becomes an emblem of persistence. For the global audience, these images tell two stories at once, one of strategic necessity and another of diplomatic choreography. For Russia, the visit reinforces that it is not isolated. For China, it showcases a leadership role in defining what many in Beijing now call the new era of pragmatic globalism. In the months ahead, attention will turn to whether the pledges discussed in Hangzhou and Beijing translate into measurable trade expansion. Economists expect continued growth in bilateral commerce, particularly in energy and technology sectors, yet questions remain about imbalance: China's dominance as exporter and financier versus Russia's reliance as supplier. Still, both governments appear satisfied with that asymmetry for now. The partnership offers resilience in uncertain times, an insurance policy against volatility in Western markets, and a framework for mutual support in global institutions. The final images from the visit show Mishustin boarding his aircraft. The Russian tricolour ripples against a cloudy sky. Officials wave goodbye. Protocol officers close folders. Photographers lower their lenses. The plane's engines roar, gathering speed, lifting off toward the capital. From Hangzhou to Beijing, the story continues, a narrative of alignment, adaptation, and ambition. As the aircraft disappears into the horizon, one truth remains evident. In the evolving geometry of global power, the lines connecting Moscow and Beijing grows thicker by the day.